We on.
Let me see. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Claude Gatebuike. I'm the Executive Director of African Great Lakes Action Network, a US-based nonprofit organization whose goal is to strive towards peace, justice, and prosperity in the Great Lakes region of Africa. I'm here along with Renee Claudel Mgenzi, who is the chairperson for Global Campaign for Rwandans Human Rights, and Global Campaign for Rwandans Human Rights is an international human rights campaign organization established to promote and campaign for the rights of Rwandans all over the globe. Both our organizations, AGLAN and Global Campaign, are the hosts for this event, and we are privileged to have our esteemed guests and experts, and we hope to learn a lot from them and use the knowledge as a basis for building a bright future for Rwanda. We're also hosting this in collaboration with Fahamu Refugee Program, as well as in collaboration with the University of Sarajevo. So we're very grateful to have Fahamu and the University of Sarajevo on board. We would like to just share a little bit of what the format's going to be. We'll have our experts present, and we will open it up to questions from the audience. The way to ask your question is to send an email to events@globalcampaign.org. The email is on the website, on the streaming website, if you will. And please provide a phone number, your Skype handle, and send your question in email. We may call you either via Skype or phone to have you speak live on air and ask your question. And we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. Our moderators are Marilise Numhoza, who is a member of Global Campaign, as well as Renee Claudel Mgenzi, chairperson for Global Campaign, and myself, Claude Gatebuike, Executive Director for AGLAN. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Renee Mgenzi and Marilise Numhoza. And I apologize for the delay. We had some technical difficulties this morning, this afternoon, and again, I apologize for the delay.
Okay, thank you, Claude, for the introduction of this event today. Without any delay, I would like to introduce you to our first speaker, Dr. Mong Zani, who will speak on the topic of effective civil society action and international advocacy method to gain support in influencing policies at the international level. Dr. Zani is Burmese democracy advocate, human rights campaigner, and a research fellow at the London School of Economics. Zani is also a visiting fellow at the London School of Economics, Civil Society and Human Security Research Unit in the Department of International Development. Dr. Zani is a prominent campaigner in the raising awareness about genocide against Rohingya people by the Burmese government. Dr. Zani, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Yes, you're welcome. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to, spend the next 5 minutes or so sharing my own experience as a former consumer boycott campaigner. Using the divestment and consumer boycotts to get Western companies investing in Burma in the 1990s and early 2000. And also, more recently, I've been working on raising awareness about, our own genocide against the Muslim Rohingya people, who number over 1 million living in Western Burma. I think the first principle of policy advocacy and also media advocacy is that we do our homework on the subject we feel very strongly about. For instance, we do not exaggerate facts. We do not make up stories, no matter how effective they may be in the short run. I think the best, the best strategy to adhere to at any given time throughout any campaign is to stick to the facts, to stick to the truth. We do not make up stories to sensationalize issue, to influence public opinion, or to push for whatever policies that you want to advocate. And also, my own experience as a grassroots activist, working in different countries, USA, UK, Southeast Asia, being involved in different issues, both Burma and larger common issues that affect the entire community of world citizens. We we really need to understand the complexities of, say, international politics, the international political economy, because there's no way, as activists and advocates and scholars as well, to avoid confronting the realities of international politics and the realities of powerful economic institutions such as corporations, companies, foreign investors, and other global players in the world's economy. And the reason is that policies are not simply about politics and principles. Policies are also about commercial interests of different governments who generally promote the economic interests of their own citizens and particularly their own corporations. Say, for instance, British government, it's ultimately about British commercial interests, the British banks, British arms industries, British insurance companies, and the same can be said about Norway. Norway is seen as peace exporting, peace loving country around the world. It has this Nobel Peace Prize, that it gives out annually. But despite the the soft power, the good image of Norway, Norway behaves no different from any other country in the world, including China and Russia, when it comes to pushing and promoting Norwegian corporations and their interest. Let me just give you one example, very quickly. Despite the Rohingya genocide that is currently unfolding in my country of Burma or Myanmar, Norwegian interests have moved in, swept up the commercial contracts with the very government that is committing genocide against Muslim Rohingya. So therefore, my point here is that be very much aware that the lateral international organizations that we will be lobbying, or we will be persuading, we will be pressuring through different strategies, will be driven primarily by their commercial and strategic interest, however they are defined. There is no free lunch in international politics. So my last comment would be, in terms of advocating for human rights, advocating for pro-people international policies, when it comes to, say, like African Great Lakes societies and countries, I think the the most crucial thing would be to really understand where the leverage points are in pushing for the kind of like a pro-human rights, pro-peace policies, because outside entities, whether it's European Union or United States or United Kingdoms, do not have your people's interest or well-being at heart. They may say that they are there to promote poverty reduction, to promote human rights, to promote women's literacy, but these are just simply public relations rhetoric. So I would not be fooled by what governments around the world say about your people or my own country or other people's countries and people. And these entities are linked up through different commercial and strategic relations. And then finally, if you look at what is happening in today's Gaza, where Israel is essentially committing day in and day out massive bombing campaign against children, women, pregnant women, bombing the hospitals, UN offices, and schools, knowing that most of the people, casualties, are innocent civilians. And so I think even in this type of media, a well-publicized scenario, the United Nations system is proving to be broken, and the UN is not working in the interest of Palestinian people. UN is not working in the interest of the African people or like the Burmese people. Therefore, I think we need to really be realistic about what we can gain out of lobbying these international organizations and national governments. And fundamentally, I think if we want a better world, a greater pro-human rights policies, I think it's really up to the people. Not the governments are not going to help promote these things unless the people are driving the government to promote the kind of world that they want to live. And so I'm going to stop there, and I don't want to keep on pontificating.
Okay. Thank you so much for your presentation. I think you hit on a number of points that are actually are of very interest to me, because AGLAN also focuses on foreign policy and Western policy in the region. But I wanted to remind the audience to send if you have a question, please send an email, or both include your phone number. Yes, send an email to events@globalcampaign.org and include your email address. Well, you have your email address, but include your phone number so we can call you to ask your question live on air, and your Skype handle, or otherwise just go ahead and send your question. In the meantime, Renee, did you or Mary-Lise have a question for Mr. Jani?
Thank you very much, Dr. Zani. You just made a very important presentation, because of what we're running a lot from what you're saying. Most of the issue people in the Grassroots have been doing in the last 10, 15 years or so. They've been campaigning, but there's a lot of little progress in terms of campaigning, and we feel that from your experience in campaigning for the people, for the genocide Rohingya people, for example, we can learn a lot from you. But my question is, I understand that all the campaigning have to to be related to international policy. Also, we need to look for those interests. When and what can we do if we need to really raise awareness of the people in danger? People are dying, and you feel that it should be done very quick. How and what in your experience, what better action which can be able to be understood and go maybe beyond those interests, as so they can a very important decision can be made by bringing together international actors to be able to to do something about any issue identified. Hello, Zani.
Well, I think Rene. Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that that we need to look at, say, like, I mean, I am least informed about the African Great Lake nations, and so I can't use your regions as an example. But from what I know about the work around Burma and the policy advocacy, I think if you look at Burma or Myanmar as an example, for the people, it is a country where people attempt to lead a peaceful and essentially a peaceful life where they can earn decent living. But for the Western or international commercial interest, it is a brothel of resources. In other words, this is a country rich in resources, so therefore they set their eyes on the how to extract the resources and how to generate profit. And secondly, they look at the country as a potential market where they can sell their consumer goods, they can export industrial goods and whatnot. And so I think because most countries or most organizations that will be coming to Great Lake regions, they will look at Africa, or particularly your region, as essentially a market and a place for resources where they can extract them. And a lot of companies, especially if you're dealing with like Western economic entities, corporations, a lot of them are sensitive to your consumer pressure. A lot of them, especially the daily consumer goods, and so that if they are sensitive to their brand name, criticism or negative publicity that will be generated out of their involvement in a particular Great Lake country, then I think that becomes your leverage point. You don't need to cook up untrue stories if they are harming, if their economic ties with a particularly bad regime or government in the region is harming the people or prolonging the government's power there, or like enabling the government to step up its repressive policies. Then I think like you take that information to the media, and in this day and age, media becomes an extremely important battleground for people to essentially inform the world's opinion. And so I think one is the names, the second, the reputation of a government, a reputation of a Western prime minister or a foreign minister, yeah, and of course, like those are like usually considered negative campaigning. You target their names using the true behavior, and the positive campaigning would be building people-to-people solidarity networks, so that we share our resources, share energy, we share strength among each other, because at the end of the day, it is the people who make the change. It is always the people who are at the bottom who suffer. Therefore, it is the people that, like, my central thought on this is that build people-to-people tie, in addition to launching negative campaigns, smart policy, the discussions, research-based narratives about what is wrong with a particular country or a government.
Thank you, Dr. Zani. Do we have a question from the audience, Renee?
Not yet. Maurice has it. Can you hear me?
I have a question. Go ahead, Maurice.
Mine was mainly a comment on what Dr. Zani just said around targeting the people and working in solidarity with the people. I think it's very important because they are the people that we share everyday activities, and they are the people that we meet, and to some extent they maybe also have similar issues that we are facing from their own leaders. So combined campaigning through the citizens of the countries that can influence international policy, I think it's very important, and I heartily appreciate what Dr. Zani said, and I hope that our listeners who are campaigners will take this to heart. Claude, up to you for your question.
Yes, first I wanted to actually comment that I think the type of campaigning and advocacy that you're talking about, Dr. Zani, has proven to work. Targeting economics as a way to advance human rights and crippling repressive regimes with economic sanctions and other types of campaigns. It's proven work. In South Africa, you know, apartheid South Africa, it got to the point where I know that a lot of the advocacy, for example, here in the U.S., part of a coalition that includes Trans-Africa Forum, which was a big driver in the U.S. In the Free South Africa movement, they push for economic, not only sanctions, but divesting from South Africa and South African companies that were involved in harming the people and advancing the apartheid government policies. They also pushed for divesting by any companies or state or anyone officially in the U.S. From going over to invest in South Africa, and multiple places, a lot of places were involved in that kind of campaign, and it's proven to work. My question is, how do you kickstart it, and how do you achieve the critical mass required to get a government moving and companies moving in the right direction? I've seen it in local news where, you know, as soon as something negative is reported about a company, they react. But on international, at the international level, how does that work? Can you share that with our audience?
Yeah, well, it depends on the type of companies, and so you have to calibrate your strategies because consumer items like, you know, clothing, the children's goods, the say like the what else? Food and food products and whatnot, like PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, Levi's jeans, you know, like Gap, you know, Mother Care, what have you. These, you know, consumer companies and corporations tend to be more sensitive to you know, individual boycotts and negative publicity, and you know, that they are the most sensitive type because the word spread fast in the age of social media. But the type of companies that are most likely to dig in their heels are those in the natural resource extractive industry, and so I think in that scenario, I think you're going to have a continuum of vulnerabilities. And so, how do you kickstart a consumer boycott campaign? Well, I mean, like, technically speaking, once you've got you know, essentially verifiable facts and direct links, you know, between the company or companies that you want to target and the repressive governments that that are doing the repression in a given, say, like African Great Lakes country, then I think it's relatively straightforward to spread the word about the consumer boycott. The first thing is people need to know the facts. A, that the company is directly involved in a particular country, providing much needed, foreign currency in significant amount to the repressive regime, and then you raise the awareness through the internet, through local media, through YouTube, and you create educational packages that are easy to be sent around, especially on the inline and online and through websites. And so once you inform the people, and then you can easily move them to take the kind of action you want to take. Stay away from Pepsi. These companies are supporting a genocide in a particular country. That is an example of the kind of narrative, based narrative you want to promote, and then you build a like-minded individuals. Everything starts small, and then they grow. They grow through word of mouth. They grow through social media, and they go through conventional media networks such as print, newspapers, and radio. And so I think it is not that complicated, and then no one needs a PhD to start a movement on say a Great Lake country.
Okay, thank you so much. How are we doing on time, Renee, Marie-Lise? We have a question from the audience.
Yes, we have one question. Can you hear me, Zani?
Yes, I can hear you, but I can't see the question.
Yes, we have one question. One member of the audience would like to know, what if trying to campaign against what, for example, a Western government is doing with an oppressing regime, or with supporting or trying to campaign against, for example, corporation which is supporting an oppressing regime? What if, because those they are more powerful than people themselves, people that also they might be persecuted because of that within those countries? And what kind of strategy to protect, oneself when you're trying to do that?
Well, I mean, I think if you're working, to try to change a particular country's scenario, situation, or repression, I think the most important premise that we have to start from is that people are more powerful than institutions that we have created. Yeah, of course, it is an article of faith. It is also, based on history, factually speaking. We create these institutions, armies, governments, United Nations. Fundamentally, it is the people that have the latent power, and the trick is to try.
Dr. Zani, 1 second. Looks like there is a technical difficulty here. Give me 1 second.
Claude.
Oh, he's muted. Is it here?
Hello?
Yeah. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Zani?
Yes.
Go ahead, Dr. Zani.
Okay. No, I think I don't want. Let me just like say one last thing. These institutions, armies and corporations and governments, of course, they are powerful and far more powerful than any one of us as individuals. But the key here is that if we are isolated individuals, unconnected with other people through principles or human compassion or understanding of human fellowship, then of course they are overwhelmingly powerful. But once we are together as a solidarity network, you no longer feel that you are completely overwhelmed by these institutions. So then the crucial thing is, international solidarity among people. And there are so many different ways to build and cultivate the kind of solidarity that would make the people feel strong and empowered and unafraid to stand up against these like Frankenstein, institutions. We as social change pushers, we cannot afford not to believe in the power of ourselves.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
I'm just going to have to sign out.
Yes, thank you very much. No, thank you very much. It was very important, and it was nice to to speak to you. We'll speak to you again. Thank you.
Okay, it's an honor. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now introduce our second speaker, which is who is Professor Gabriel de la Motte. And Professor, can you hear us? Okay, in the meantime, I'll introduce the professor.
Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, Professor. Hello, Professor de la Motte. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes, hello. You're most welcome. You'll be our next speaker. And I'm going to do a brief introduction about you to our listeners, and then I'll give you a go-ahead to speak. Is that all right?
Hello?
Our next speaker will speak on the topic of mechanisms and challenges of pursuit of justice under international human rights and criminal law. He is a professor of international law at the University Cattolica di Milano and counsel for the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda between 2003 to 2004. Professor de la Motte was also...
Yes, hello? Hello?
Yeah, Professor de la Motte was also a law clerk for the Prosecutor Office of the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia in 2000 and a member of government delegation for establishment of the International Criminal Court. So bear with us when we put her online. Hello, Professor. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay. Bonjour. Bonjour, professeur.
Bonjour. Oui.
Yeah, on vient de passer votre biographie et
Ok, d'accord.
je pense que c'est le moment pour que vous commencez à parler à nos audiences.
Oui, et sur quelle question, s'il vous plaît?
Je peux lire ça en anglais, c'est bien pour
Yes,
vous?
okay, that's fine.
Okay. The question is around the mechanism and challenges of pursuing of justice under international human rights and criminal law.
Pardon, je ne vous entends pas. En fait, j'entends deux, trois fois. Excusez-moi, j'entends deux, trois voix ensemble.
Ok, attends, on va faire quelque chose. Donnez-nous une minute.
Attendez-moi.
I would like to tell you that the professor will be speaking in French. So in the meantime, while we're waiting to connect with him, if you don't understand French, please try and find someone who will be able to translate for you, or hopefully, and we will try and summarize afterwards.
Yes.
Yes, Professor. Can you hear us all right? Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear us? Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great,
Yeah.
great. Okay, okay. Okay, now go ahead. Go ahead for your presentation.
Yes, but my presentation will be on what exactly?
Yes. Your presentation will be on the mechanism and the challenges of pursuit of justice under international human rights and criminal law.
Oui. Okay. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Now I can hear you. Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I can hear you. You can hear me?
I can hear you properly. I can hear you very well, yes.
Okay, that's fine. Yes. Vous savez que okay, that's fine. Thank you so much. So, bonsoir tout le monde. En fait,
Bonsoir.
oui.
On vous attend?
No, I'm not able to hear anything now. I'm really sorry that I can't hear anything now.
I can hear you.
But we can hear you properly. We can hear you now. I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
No?
Okay. Let's go.
Is Barbara listening tonight? No? Susan Thompson.
Can you hear us?
Okay. Let's.
Okay, oui.
Can you hear me now?
Oui, oui.
Okay.
Oui, parfait.
Okay.
Mais en fait, oui, la question qui se pose, ouais. C'est un peu compliqué en fait cette connexion-là. C'est un peu, oui. Bon, très bien. Sur la question de droit international qui concerne le génocide au Rwanda, présentement, c'est un peu Oui, c'est un peu difficile d'en parler de manière générale. Oui, je peux parler là 10 minutes. Est-ce que, oui, je peux parler?
I apologize to our audience. We're having technical difficulties with the professor. Professor Susan Thompson is on the line. She's here with us. Perhaps we can, as we try to reconnect with De La Morte, perhaps we can go ahead and give the floor to Professor Susan Thompson. Is that okay with you, Renee and Marie-Lise?
Là ou pas? Je peux parler là ou pas?
Oui, vous pouvez parler.
Ok, très bien. Alors, la question de droit, là je vous entends.
Hello, Claude. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Because the connection of Gabriel was not going very well. I'm going to try to arrange it. Hold on, he's coming in. Hello?
Allô? Oui, vous m'entendez?
Oui, yes.
Oui, c'est bien.
Oui, très bien. Écoutez, René, the problem is that I don't have feedback, so I don't know where I can start. Now,
Start now.
May I speak?
Yes,
may I speak now?
You
right
can
now?
start now, yes.
May I?
Yes, yeah, you've got the
Okay,
floor.
that's
Yes.
fine, perfect. Alors là, eh ben, c'est un peu bonsoir tout le monde. Oui, I can hear you. That's fine.
Okay.
Ok, je peux aller?
Oui.
Très bien. Oui, très bien. Ben, c'est un peu complexe en fait de parler.
Okay, Professor, let us try it again later. Because the communication is bad. Let me call you back. Let's get other speakers and then we can go back to you after.
Is that okay?
Is it okay? Okay. Claude? Claude? Claude?
Yes, yes.
Can you introduce Susan?
Wait, go ahead and unmute Susan, please, so that the audience can hear. Right now, she's muted. And then we'll try to reconnect with
It's fine.
De La Morte. Susan, can you speak, and let's make sure that the audience can hear you? It looks like you're muted, but you may not be.
Hi, Susan. It's not on our end. She's not muted.
She muted herself.
I think she's muted herself.
Professor Thompson, are you there?
Okay. Let's get
Dr. Barbara?
okay, can we get Peter in?
No. Claude?
Yes.
So let's get Peter in. It's going to put, about international justice, a bit of trying to, try and summarize the subject of the Professor Gabriel.
Okay. Is Peter going to join via the Hangout, or is he on Skype?
Okay, let's get him in.
to the network.
Hello?
The network.
Hello, Peter, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, hold on 1 second, yes.
Is Peter on?
Yeah.
Yes, Peter is on, and so I'm going to connect him now. Peter, can you hear me?
Can. Yes,
Can
I
you hear
can.
me? Great. Remy. Okay.
Okay.
Can you see him?
Yes.
Great.
Hi, Peter. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I'll take this quick opportunity to introduce Peter. Peter is a doctor. He's a doctoral researcher in transitional justice at the University of Leicester. His research focuses on the Great Lakes region and, in particular, justice in the Rwandan case post-genocide. Peter, welcome.
Thank you.
Great. Peter, the floor is yours. Peter, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
the floor is yours.
Please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you. Everyone can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I will just talk very shortly about the challenges that we're facing in terms of justice and international law, international criminal law in the case of Rwanda. Many who are activists in the case of Rwanda and the Congo and the Great Lakes region will know that justice is a key issue that has been of contention during a lot of the advocacy that many that we do. And it's a key issue which is very much important to the building of the nation and to the moving forward, especially following many conflicts in Rwanda, Burundi, Congo, and many other places. Now, there are many challenges which face the practice of international law because there is a separation between the principles of international law and the practice of international law. And this we will come to discuss shortly, just to try and shed a light on the challenges that are being faced by many people who are campaigners for human rights and who are campaigners for justice post-conflict situations. International law provides for 3 tools which can be used by practitioners and by the international community to administer justice in situations where there's been conflict, and especially in situations where there's been war crimes and crimes against humanity such as genocide and other crimes that we all know that have taken place in many regions of the world, in particular as we're focusing on Rwanda and the Great Lakes. These tools that can be used by the international community and the community of states is, number 1, extradition, number 2, universal jurisdiction, and number 3, tribunals which are set up by multilateral diplomacy, such as the ICTR, the ICTY, the Special Court for Sierra Leone, and other courts that we have seen in the course of the last decade and the last century, as we can read. Now, there are many challenges which face all these tools which can be used in order for justice to be applied in situations such as Rwanda. If we talk about extradition, and this is following on to really many of the points that Dr. Zani made when he's talking about advocacy, even in Burma, in his own region, you will find that there are political interferences in these legal tools that can be used, and that in itself is a blockage of law, because law is an ideal which we use in society which should be apolitical, which should be void of politics and purely focusing on facts and the ideals of justice being achieved in such situations. The problem that is faced with countries and international community when it comes to extraditing people who are charged with war crimes, and in the case of Rwanda, many times it's genocide, extradition as a tool for justice, there are many challenges which it faces, and one is that the current government of Rwanda faces many human rights abuses which are being reported about. And secondly, there is no evidence of separation of powers between the executive and the judiciary, which then leads to the question whether, as a tool for justice, extradition can achieve that justice that it is aiming to achieve. When there is no separation of powers in a country such as Rwanda, where there is alleged interference of the government in a lot of the judicial processes, especially when you're dealing with high-profile cases of genocide and war crimes, you are faced with certain difficulties, such as the tampering of defense witnesses and the ability for defense witnesses to be able to perform their duties as part of a legal process. There is a challenge that is faced by many practitioners who have practiced in Rwanda, and this is the access to documentation. Many of the cases which are taken back to Rwanda for the sake of justice being brought for the crimes that were committed in Rwanda in 1994 and after, many of the cases have gone through the Gacaca process, which is a process of local justice that has been applied in Rwanda, given the number of the large-scale massacres that took place and the number of the people who were allegedly to have been involved in these massacres. The international community and the Rwandese government found that there was a practical issue with dealing with many of these cases. And so the Rwandese government came up with a system, a traditional system for justice delivery called Gacaca, in which the local people would judge the people who are accused of the genocide. Now, there are many challenges which this process has faced, and there are many academics who have written and researched about this issue. One of the challenges is the lack of due process, which is based on the fact that many of the people involved in this process, in the judicial process, are not judicially trained. Many of the judges who sit on this tribunal are not judicially trained to any standard that would be adhered to by any country that practices law in the terms in the letter of the law. But of course, the problem of Rwanda is understood, and many people have given the benefit of the doubt to the people of Rwanda, with the idea that, of course, the government in such a short period of time could not train so many people that are needed to be trained to be able to be sufficient for the task that they are being tasked with. Nonetheless, this is a challenge that has been faced in Rwanda. And so many of these case loads that have been judged in the Gacaca courts, they have been archived in Rwanda, and it is very difficult for many of the defense teams of the people who have been extradited to Rwanda so far to be able to access these files. And in terms of justice, this in itself is a challenge that needs to be looked at, especially when when activists are talking about justice delivery in Rwanda. The second tool which I talked about in my introduction is universal jurisdiction. Universal jurisdiction is a tool that is used by the international community to judge people when extradition is not an option or when extradition is not a preferred option. Universal jurisdiction in itself is a historical tool that has been used in many times in the Western countries 200-300 years ago when they were dealing with the problem of piracy. And it in itself is designed to deal with such problems such as piracy, which are problems that are shared amongst nations, and where the nation's national interests would come and concur and say that they need to be able to judge someone even though they're in international seas or they're in someone else's territory for the good of all nations. This worked because at the time when this principle was being brought forth, many of the pirates who were being judged were outlaws in a number of countries, and their activities were disrupting the economic interests of many countries. So, for example, France, Spain, and the Great Britain, who were all sea powers at the time, would all agree to use this tool, one of the countries to use this tool to judge an individual from the other country, because the outcome benefits all these countries. And like Dr. Zani mentioned about the national interest of states, this is where national interest concurred. Now, the problem where Rwanda we face is that this universal jurisdiction ideal being applied in the case of Rwanda, it collides with national interests and the politics of many nations. And this causes the unequal delivery of justice based on these narrow interests. An example that can be given is the example of the Netherlands. The Netherlands has been a country that has invested greatly in the Rwandese legal system. The Rwandese government approached the Dutch government to train their judges and to train many of their legal personnel in Rwanda. This was done at a great cost to the Dutch government, and from my research, there are a number of MPs and media personalities in Holland who complained in the media and to the population saying, why is our money being spent training judges from outside where there are problems in Holland? And so because of that, you would find that the government of Holland is under pressure to justify their expenditure in Rwanda, in the Rwandese judicial system. Now, when cases go to Holland for extradition or universal jurisdiction, where alleged perpetrators of genocide are found to be in Holland, then there is pressure for the Dutch authorities to extradite to Rwanda, because one of the bars for extradition is that there is no justice in the country, in the recipient country or the requesting country. It's very difficult for Dutch authorities to be able to refuse extradition, having spent so much money training the judges in Rwanda. And so even if the facts don't support the fact that the claim that the justice system in Rwanda has improved, then the pressure, the political pressure upon the Dutch system would be for them to extradite. These are some of the challenges which are faced in this practice of extradition and universal jurisdiction in the case of Rwanda. The third tool, as I conclude, which is used by international law, is tribunals which are set up by multilateral diplomacy, such as that of the ICTR. This has faced many challenges. We have seen a lot of concerns with the way in which the ICTR was conducted. The primary function for the ICTR, according to the United Nations resolution that was tabled to set up this institution, was to try suspects of genocide and war crimes in Rwanda, 1994 till 1996. Now, history, as we continue to study the history of Rwanda, we can see that there was crimes committed by both the Hutu and the Tutsi ethnic groups of Rwanda. But because of what we call in academia victor's justice, which has taken place in Rwanda, where the victor is able to call the shots and to direct the policy in terms of transitional justice, we have not had any individuals from the Tutsi minority group who have been able to be tried at this international tribunal for Rwanda. And this is a challenge because it has resulted in many observers saying that this court was a court that was upholding victor's justice. Where there has been attempts to try individuals from the Tutsi ethnic group, there are many writings about Carla de Ponte's her involvement in trying to bring a number of RPF officials to justice, but that was rebuffed. And indeed, Rwanda complained, and Rwanda threatened to pull its support from the tribunal. Now, given the politics behind the tribunal and the funds that have been spent on this tribunal, over $1.2 billion to date, there has been an expectation by the international community to be able to show that this tribunal has been functional and that it has worked and it has delivered justice. But unfortunately, from an analytical point of view that one can claim to be objective, this has not been the case. Because in a situation, in a conflict where there was genocide, but also there was domestic violence which has been perpetrated by people on both sides, then one would expect that there would be individuals tried from both sides. And this has not been the case. These are some of the challenges which face international justice. Many people ask themselves, how does international law deal with situations of conflict such as Rwanda? And the answer on many people is that the principles of international law work on paper, but the practice of international law is completely different. And that is a challenge which I believe, as campaigners, not only for Rwanda, but campaigners for human rights and justice across the globe, this is a question that we have to study, a question that we have to look at carefully, because we are living in a world where there are conflicts which are springing up every year, and there are also historical conflicts which are ongoing. Dr. Zani mentioned Gaza and Israel, and there are many other places in the Middle East and in the Far East where there is conflict. Now, there has to be a situation, there has to be a tool that is applied for justice to be seen to be done by the people of these countries and by the people of the international community. But there is a breakage in the principles of international law and the practice of international law. I think maybe I'll stop there and I'll let others contribute. Thank you.
Hey, Peter, hang on. We would like for you to address questions from the audience. I would like to remind the audience that this event is being hosted by Global Campaign for Rwandans Human Rights, a UK-based organization that campaigns for Rwandans human rights all over the globe, and also African Great Lakes Action Network, which is a US-based advocacy organization that focuses on especially US foreign policy in the Great Lakes. That the goal for the organization is to bring peace, justice, and prosperity to the Great Lakes region. We are hosting this event along with, in collaboration with the University of Sarajevo and Fahamu Refugee Program. So again, we're grateful to have so many experts in their fields sharing their experiences, and we hope to take this knowledge again to build a better and more prosperous Rwanda where people's rights are protected and respected. So the first question from the audience, you spoke about a few. This question came through email. You spoke about the universal jurisdiction and the shortcomings of the ICTR. But there seems to be an opportunity with a universal jurisdiction to pursue members of the RPF who were indicted in Spain, for example, who have been indicted for war crimes and crimes against humanity and genocide. What are the prospects? What is actually the likelihood of anyone ever being brought to trial? We know that Agostinho Pinochet was brought to trial years and years after his crimes. What is the statute of limitation, if there is?
It's an interesting question, and it's one that we are still debating and studying. Mr. President Pinochet, you will find that there was a reason why he was brought to justice a long time, and that is connected to the politics of Spain and the United Kingdom at the time. The shortcomings of universal jurisdiction, the main thing is this, is that you cannot separate the application of universal jurisdiction from the politics of the host nation where these people can be brought to justice. There is an RPF official, the name escapes me, who came to the United Kingdom, I think last year or the year before, and there was an arrest warrant on him, and he was not arrested. Similarly, another official, I think it's Akano, went to France and was held for a number of days but was released. And one will find that the main reason for this, and why perhaps at the current way that this practice is applied, that there is no hope for this issue of victor's justice, is that the way universal jurisdiction works in most countries, especially common law countries, is that the state has to go through its prosecution service in order to bring the indictment or to bring the charges to the individual. Now, when you talk about the principle of separation of powers in terms of the judiciary and the executive, that is only limited to the courts. And so, for example, in this country, in Great Britain, you will find that the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, is part of the executive. Some may argue indirectly, but yet it is under the executive branch of government because it is a state institution that is controlled through the Ministry of Justice. They decide who to charge and who not to charge. So before the process goes to the courts, where then this separation of powers can be enjoyed, it is still under the umbrella of the executive branch of government. Now, when such an issue of justice is under the executive branch of government, already there is a failure in justice. And so you will find that at the moment, the RPF government has enjoyed a lot of support from many Western governments, even though that seems to be changing now. But for the last 2 decades, or for the best part of the last 2 decades, the RPF government has enjoyed a lot of support from many Western governments. And this mainly is because of national interests, of course, in Rwanda and in the region in Congo, but also because there was a collective guilt by the international community for what has been seen to be a lack of response or a lack of intervention in what happened in Rwanda in 1994. So this has been a lot of political capital for the Rwandese government, and they have used it very wisely and very effectively in order to make sure that international governments are wary of leveraging criticism for Rwanda. Now, indicting individuals who are part of the regime is or would be seen as criticism for the government of Rwanda. And so through very clever diplomacy on the Rwandese part, they've been able to use this political capital that they have in order to avoid any international state, any outside state, being able to charge individuals of the regime. And so
Peter,
the case
Peter,
is brought. Yes.
Peter, one second. I think our members of the audience are having difficulty with the streaming. If for those of you who are having difficulty, please refresh your browsers and hit the play button again. Go ahead, Peter. Sorry to interrupt.
I will summarize and finish here. So, in other words, the answer to the question is it's not looking great for justice in terms of universal jurisdiction, because in many instances, these cases or these individuals, their dossiers are not able to reach the judiciary. That is to say, to reach the courts. In this country, the Crown Prosecution Service holds the right to charge, and there are many criteria which they use, and one of them is public interest. If it's not in the public interest for the Crown Prosecution Service to bring charges, then charges will not be brought. That's on any case, whether it's in the application of universal jurisdiction or in customary law in the United Kingdom. And so, unfortunately, I think, or I would assert that the judgment on the CPS, on the Crown Prosecution Service side in this country, has been that it is not in the public interest for charges to be brought or for these individuals to be pursued in the courts when they are in this country. Of course, we have to remember that universal jurisdiction can only be applied if the individual in question is in the country where universal jurisdiction can be applied. And of course, finally, another issue is that the idea of universal jurisdiction is interpreted differently from different states. Some states are more liberal than others, and others are more conservative. And so there is no clarity in terms of application. There is no uniformity in the international community, and that is a problem. Thank you.
Peter, thank you. I think you touched on something that is very close to what Dr. Z presented earlier to us, where he basically said public pressure is the way to go. That is how we get these governments and multinationals moving, and whenever it's not in the public interest, we, the activists and the advocates, have to make it public interest by getting the citizens of these countries that have universal jurisdiction to make it public interest through the media and through the people. I'm going to turn it over to Renee. I think there are some questions from the audience.
Thank you, Peter. We've got a question from Norbert, and his question is: do you think that impunity issue of the RPF army involved in crime committed against Rwandans will ever be addressed where this government is still on power? Why do you think the international community is silent on that issue? It's for Norbert. It comes from Norbert, this question is.
Yes. Norbert, I think that unfortunately that's the way it looks at the moment, but as it has been mentioned in the previous statement made, that the public, we can bring the agenda onto the top of the media agenda, and that of course can start seeing impunity becoming less and less in that case. We have a problem in Rwanda of victors' justice, and that is a problem that the victors or the people who are alleged to have won the conflict, if you can call it that, have enjoyed this impunity because of reasons that I have gone into previously. The problem with fighting impunity using, for example, what Dr. Zani was talking about, like the case of South Africa and apartheid, where there was a boycott for the economy of South Africa. That is effective in economies that are very high in export, or economies that really do have something to contribute in the region or in the world. The case of Rwanda is different in that our economy is not a great export economy. Our economy in Rwanda is based much upon, is much supported by donor aid from the outside. The big exports of Rwanda are tea and coffee, but in the grand scheme of the world economy, they are not the leading exporters of these commodities. And one has to remember that there are other national interests in the Congo, in the rich North Kivu and South Kivu regions of the Congo, where there are international companies that one can allege are supported by their governments, because that is the job of governments, to advance the interests of their big corporations. And there are these corporations that are mining and that are able to support or to provide quite an important element of the economy of their host of their home countries. And so until this issue is addressed, especially with the Congolese government being able to build its own institutions and being able to control its entire landmass, most importantly North and South Kivu, I don't see impunity ending in Rwanda, because Rwanda is a gateway for the resource-rich Kivu. Unfortunately, because Congo in the history since independence has not been able to develop its infrastructure, and so Kinshasa cannot control North and South Kivu in the way that, for example, Washington can control the other coast of Texas and California. I'm just comparing the two countries because of the landmass. And so it is one of the problems that we have is, as long as the Congolese government is not stable enough to be able to control North and South Kivu, and there are many reasons for this, I don't think impunity in Rwanda will end, because there are interests of the international community that require for this impunity to continue in order for their resources and their activities in the North and South Kivu to be protected. It is a cynical view, I understand, but it is, in my opinion, a realistic view, and it is one that we have to consider with great care and with realism.
Thank you, Peter. This question is from me. As we know, the international justice system is evolving, is running, is changing with the time, from the experience, the cases which are trying through courts. Do you think we'll reach a point where international justice will be driven by really human rights, the people suffering, beyond any economic interest? Do you think we'll reach kind of that, that stage where there will be no other drive behind implementation, or behind trying to bring justice, and another drive will be just people's life, the respect of people and the freedom of the people? Do you think we'll achieve that?
I think that political scientists would argue that realism as a political ideology is the governing or the most buoyant ideology that can help us explain the way the international system works and even the way national systems work. And so, unfortunately, this system supports that there must be national interests are the ones that are at the forefront of justice and foreign policy, international justice and foreign policy. I think, however, we are living in an age where things are changing. So, for example, if you had asked this question 15 years ago, I think most observers and most academics could have told you, no, this system cannot change because it is written in stone. And unfortunately, because nations are self-interested, they will look after their interests before they look after the interests of others. And so the United States will look after the interests of its economy and its citizens before it starts worrying about the interests of the Rwandese people. But I think when you are asking the question now in the age of 24-hour media, and most importantly, in the age of social media, I think that we are, in fact, living a change in attitudes. But this change is only driven by the people at the grassroots taking initiative to raise the profile of the issue that they're campaigning about to the forefront. We saw this most effectively 2 years ago with the Joseph Kony campaign that was led by a group of an NGO based in America, where within less than a fortnight, an issue that I believe was at the very bottom pile of American foreign policy. And when I say American foreign policy, I think we should group that into Western foreign policy. That issue came up to the top of their agenda, to the point where the president and other influential people were talking about this. Now, there is no economic interest that changed. Uganda did not all of a sudden discover huge amounts of oil or resources that could have forced a change in foreign policy in the American government and such governments. But what changed this is the public opinion, which is what these days runs policy more than even resources. I believe that public opinion has become another pillar in terms of policy in the West. And so I think as activists, we need to think how we can raise the profile of issues through ingenuity. That campaign of Kony 2012 was very ingenious in that it was able to draw the masses, young people who don't necessarily understand the problem of Joseph Kony or the problem of Uganda, but because that thing became fashionable. And because activism is fashionable, especially when it is trending on the social medias, then we need to know how to exploit that. And once you force an issue on the top of the agenda, then the realities of the issue have to be addressed and have to be debated by people who are knowledgeable about these things. And so to answer that question, I think, yes, now it is possible for policy and for agenda to be driven by morality and by human rights and not only by resources. But that can only happen if people use ingenuity to bring these issues to the top of the agenda, because governments will not drag these issues to the top of the agenda. Governments don't operate on morality or on issues such as protection of peoples when interests are not concerned.
Great. Peter, Claude? Hello, Claude?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry. There is how much more time do we have for Peter? Just a couple more questions from the audience.
We have, there's an audience. We're trying to connect for a question.
Okay.
Let me see how I can do that.
Okay, go ahead and get the person in the audience to ask their question directly.
Okay.
In the meantime, while you're working on that, again, I'd like to thank Peter and all the experts that have joined us for sharing your knowledge. Again, we'd like to thank also Fahamu Refugee Program that is collaborating with us in hosting this event, as well as the University of Sarajevo. And I know that there are a lot of students that are following this live on air. So let me know when you have the audience member ready to speak out their question.
Okay, she is 1 second.
Must wait. If I can make a correction, a factual correction on something I said, just looking through my notes here. The ICTR was mandated to look at crimes that took place between 1st of January 94 to the 31st of December 1994, not 1996. That's a factual correction.
Great.
Okay.
Okay. She's here. Can you ask a question? Yes, you're on.
Yes,
Can you are on? Can you ask a question, please? You're on.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, you're on.
Okay, I want to ask a Peter question, please.
He can hear you.
Yeah, he can hear you. Peter can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, Peter, can you hear me?
Yeah, he can hear you.
I can hear you, yes.
Yeah, okay. My name is Prudentienne Stewart. I am a Rwandan and a survivor of genocide.
We're losing Prudentienne.
Hello, Prudentienne, we are using you.
Yeah, can I continue?
Yes, you're on.
Okay.
We are hearing you. Can you switch off the your computer? We can hear you.
If she can mute the live stream.
Okay, yeah. So I switched off my system here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you properly. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. My name is Prudentienne Stewart. I live in England. I am a Rwandan myself and a survivor of the 1994 genocide against Tutsis in Rwanda. And I believe you have heard my story. I survived genocide. I lost a member of my family in the genocide, and I lost other member of my family in the crime against the humanity, in the massacres committed by some of members of RPF. Sometime when, like you just said, it is true. It is good if people who committed crime or anything else can be punished, can face justice. But sometimes I get confused because somewhere you just said crime and were committed by both sides. When you talk both sides, you say both Tutsis and the Hutus. To me, I find it difficult to say that Tutsis committed the genocide or committed the crime against humanity, because like me, I was a genocide survivor. I was being hunted by Hutu militias, not all Hutus in fact, but some Hutus who were genociders who got involved in the genocide. But to say that Tutsis on the other side committed the crime, it means where I was hiding, I came back and go and killed Hutus. Can you clarify the Tutsis who committed the crime, but not all Tutsis in the same time equal? It should be clarified, not all Hutus who committed the genocide, because Tutsis in Rwanda were victimized. So I don't know who Tutsi you want to talk about. Who is Tutsi who committed the crime? Who needs to be punished? Who is talking with both sides? Who are both sides? Please answer me this question.
Thank you. Thank you, Prudentienne. And I really appreciate, in fact, your comment, and I think you are absolutely right that there is a disparity in the vocabulary that we use in our discourse when we talk about what happened in Rwanda. I think in the discourse, especially when we are talking academically in the discourse, we would say that both sides in the interest of balance, because when it is now accepted in the general discourse on the genocide on Rwanda, that the way we address it is genocide against the Tutsis by the Hutu. In the same way that you say it's not all Hutus that committed genocide, And I suppose that the discourse would have to change the vocabulary to say the genocide committed against the Tutsis by Hutu militias, or by, you can insert the name that people would choose to put there, not all Hutus. And so it would be correct to say that Tutsis committed crimes against Hutus, because it's not all Tutsis that committed crimes against Hutus. It is a select number of people belonging to the Tutsi ethnic group. In terms of perhaps disputing that there were crimes committed by members of the Tutsi ethnic group, that would not be factually correct. And academically speaking, and also anecdotally speaking, that would not be correct. In terms of anecdote, you will find that members of the Hutu and the Tutsi communities now would be willing to say that they are aware of crimes committed by members of the Tutsi ethnic group. Many of them who we can say were the RPA soldiers who were coming into the country from the north of the country. You will know that anecdotically in Byumba, there are many people who died at the hands of the RPA soldiers, and many times it was not in combat situations. Because, for example, if we look at the Bisesero massacres that took place in Rwanda, that was not a combat situation. That was a refugee camp where women and children were massacred. And so this does equate to war crimes. This does not mean that all Tutsis killed, committed these war crimes. It's a select number. And so perhaps we need to, rightly, as you say, we need to alter our vocabulary when we deal with these issues. In the same way that there are many Hutus who did not agree with what was going on, who did not support, and who were not involved in the genocide against the Tutsi population of Rwanda. And so perhaps the discourse and the vocabulary also ought to change, that we talk about a genocide against the Tutsi by militias, many of which were comprised by a majority Hutu ethnic population. And so I think we are talking about a matter of vocabulary in discourse, but I don't think we can disagree in terms of facts, because if we are going to disagree on facts, then that will be a completely different debate, because it is not only anecdotal evidence, but it is also factual evidence that have been published by several human rights organizations and the United Nations.
Peter, hold on one second. There is a technical glitch. Looks like. Okay, go ahead. You're okay now. You can proceed.
And I was saying that there is evidence, if it is to be accepted as that there are crimes that were committed by the RPA soldiers, both in Rwanda and in Congo. I've mentioned Bisesero. I've mentioned the massacre that I mentioned. And so it's not a matter of an argument of fact. I believe it's a matter of an argument of the vocabulary that we ought to use when we are describing these terrible events that happened in our country 20 years ago. And I think you are courageous in the way you speak about your own story, and there are many stories such as yours, and I commend you, and I hope that this will not happen again in our country. For the many stories like yours do not need to happen again. And this is why I believe we need to discuss these issues and address the issues of justice, because only a true reconciliation can happen when all people of Rwanda feel that the justice has worked for all of them. Thank you, Prudencia.
Okay, thank you, Peter, for the answer. I think what I'm understanding here is that it is incorrect to state that a whole ethnic group is responsible for genocide or massacres, Hutus or Tutsis, but it is also factual that members of the Hutu ethnic group were responsible for committing genocide in Rwanda, and that members of the Tutsi ethnic group were also responsible for a lot of massacres, and some of which have been documented by the UN mapping report as genocide in the Congo. Okay, Renee and Marilise, it looks like Peter's responding, but He's can you unmute him?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Peter.
No, in the discourse of Rwanda, I just wanted to just make, maybe it is a serious point, although it's always ignored, that also we need to talk about the Twa ethnic group, because I believe excluding them sometimes can come across as perhaps not taking them as a serious entity of our country. Because I've read some documentation of course not to a large scale, but of course of some involved of certain populations of the Twa community being involved in certain crimes as well. And so omitting them is not doing our country any justice, because it is ignoring them. And so I believe it is all Rwandans, there are members from all ethnic groups in Rwanda that were involved in heinous acts against humanity. And we are now in the process of reconciling and dealing with this, whilst debating and putting the spotlight on these things and addressing how justice should be done in relation to these issues.
Okay, thank you so much, Peter, for your presentation and your time with us. You're welcome to stick around, but we're at the point where we're ready to move to our next expert presenter. And just real quick, though, I wanted to check our technology. Susan, would you please try to speak so we can check the sound? It looks like you might be muted, but maybe you aren't. Okay, it looks like you're speaking, but I'm not hearing.
I am speaking. Can you hear me now?
Okay, yes, now I can hear you.
I'm on a rural connection.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll turn it over to Mary-Lise and Renee real quickly for the introduction, and we look forward to hearing your presentation. Thank you so much, Peter, and everyone else that's presented prior to Dr. Susan Thompson.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Claude. Dr. Susan Thompson, welcome. I'm going to give a brief bio about you. Dr. Thompson will be speaking on reconciliation process in post-conflict situations. Dr. Thompson is Assistant Professor of Peace and Conflict Studies at the Colgate University in the United States. Susan specializes in state-society relations in Africa, in particular power relation between the state and individuals in post-conflict countries. She also focuses on urban refugees as well as internally displaced persons, concentrating on the countries of Rwanda and Kenya. Susan is the author of Whispering Trust to Power, Everyday Resistance to Reconciliation in Post-Genocide Rwanda book, and which was published in 2013. Dr. Thompson, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, most welcome. The stage is yours.
The stage is mine?
Yes.
Thanks to the organizers. I'm glad to be here. I'm sorry for the back and forth with some of you on getting me here. It's summer here, so my kids are running around, so I apologize in advance. They might run in. What I wanted to talk about today just quickly was to push the conversation on the discourse of reconciliation in Rwanda and the ways in which the current government has instrumentalized the suffering of some in the name of unity, and the ways in which the current Rwandan government has instituted practices that actually exclude and further marginalize individuals who've already been silenced. So the book that I published last year really is a look at those instruments, but also at the forms of structural violence that Rwandans are facing. And of course, I'm not an optimist at the moment. I'll be honest about that. I don't feel very heartened about what this government has decided to do. I think many of its policies promoted in practice in the name of reconciliation are deeply problematic. So I don't want to say that I see violence coming. I don't. I think Rwandans are actually pushed to the margins. The opposition exists outside the country largely, and the recent spate of murders and disappearances has caused me at least some concern. So I look forward to discussing all of that with other specialists in the room, but also the internet audience. So I want to focus my remarks on two practices. One is the Ngando Interero shift. The government has started to train certain kinds of citizens to become good Rwandans. There's a behavioral and cultural shift afoot that's really focused on young people. And I think to be a 20-year-old, a 25-year-old in Rwanda is probably the hardest demographic to, in which to exist, because of course the government has so many expectations for young people. And we see this in Ngando and of course the more recent Itorero, in which university students, bureaucrats, military, local officials are subject to a type of education that requires them to actually push the local population to behave in a certain way, and it's that micro process of reconciliation that I think is so difficult. One thing that my research in 2006 found was that rural Rwandans, the 65% of the population that live either destitute or very poor, didn't trust the government to protect their interests, found gacaca to be abusive, found any sort of national reconciliation and unity initiative brought forth from the center, from the National Unity and Reconciliation Commission, implemented through local officials to be something that caused great hardship for them, whether it was emotional hardship because they didn't want to relive the trauma, or they were unable to practice the trauma that the government wanted them to perform, particularly in the mourning month of April. But also physically, in the sense that it took them away from their daily chores, and it actually fractured the nascent network that they had begun to craft after the genocide. So of course we know rural life in Rwanda is so different from urban life, and we have a big problem at the moment because I think the current elite doesn't have much regard for local rural practices, and that causes concern for rural people because they don't know how to get their daily needs met, plus they have this burden of having to reconcile and unify and be good Rwandans. So the government has embarked on a little bit of a discourse shift. The narrative is now good citizens, citizens who behave properly, and there is that sort of cultural shift in which the government has disdain for a lot of the people for which they are responsible. So you see that lack of legitimacy emerging.
Susan,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No worries.
Would you mind stepping back a little bit from the camera?
I don't actually have much room to move
okay.
where I am. Yeah,
okay.
So I'm a bit stuck. I'm sorry. It's
okay.
not ideal. I don't have my iPad with me.
All right.
I actually was doing umuganda all morning with my kids, so we, but an American version. So we're at a farm. We raise farm baskets for families who can't afford to eat fresh vegetables every Saturday morning.
Right.
So all this to say, I apologize for that, but I'm not in an ideal location at the moment. Where was I? I forget where I was speaking. I can turn the video off if it's distracting.
No. Go ahead as you proceed that way. You were talking about the current policies and the mistrust, but the rural population and the difference between city life versus rural life.
Right. So I wanted to highlight the Itorero practice in which the government educates young people, including young people from the diaspora, to become the leaders and to implement and oversee this new sort of Rwandan citizen who is focused on development, who believes in one Rwanda for all Rwandans, and is in many cases unable to step back and take a serious look at the way in which they are positioned vis-a-vis the structures of authority and the structures of government in Rwanda. So one thing that Rwanda has that other African countries do not is a very strong, very centralized state structure. So for those coming from abroad, those born after the genocide, they are basically the implementers and the agitators for reconciliation and unity. And I think our work needs to be on trying to get these people to think critically about their role and to step back from the broad disdain that the current government has for rural people, which I think you could substitute broadly survivors of the genocide, whether Hutu or Tutsi. So of course you can't talk about being a Hutu survivor of the genocide, but at the local level, at the rural level, people really, they have little commitment to an ethnic identity. They have greater commitment to their identity as rural producers or subsistence farmers. And the way that the government has recreated a new Rwanda. For all Rwandans, it actually only includes individuals who've been able to successfully go through mechanisms and educations like Ichorero. Ingando is largely focused on Hutu prisoners and Hutu youth to train them how to behave in a certain way. So it's an action that sublimates and pushes down their ability to be full participants. So we see at this moment in Rwandan history, if you critique the government, you can expect to be imprisoned arbitrarily, perhaps even disappeared in some cases. And if you are a political leader, you should be fearful for your life. And I have been heartened, but also disheartened by the recent return of the Green Party and Frank Habineza to the National Political Party Forum, because I'm wondering, has he been co-opted or is he working from the inside? I don't actually know, so that's a question I would pose to the group. And I'll stop there so we have time for questions.
Dr. Thompson, thank you so much for your time. I'm not sure if we have any question from the audience yet. Okay, bear with us a second. We'll have a quick look on what the audience are asking.
Hello.
Hello, yes, you're connected. What's your question? What's your name and what's your question? Hello, can you hear us? Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Hello.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, you are online now. You can ask a question to Susan. Hello.
My name is Abdul Karim Ali.
Yes, Ali. Yes.
Do you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Susan. Can you hear him?
I didn't hear his name.
Yeah, my name is Abdul Karim Ali. I am a commissioner with RNC for Research and Development. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Did you say RNC, Research and Development?
I'm a commissioner for RNC for Research and Development.
Okay.
And I had a question for you, please.
Please.
Can you restate your name one more time?
Yeah. Yeah, I said my name is Abdul Karim Ali. I'm a commissioner for RNC for Research and Development.
Yes, go ahead, Abdul Karim. Go ahead with your question.
Okay, thank you. My question is just, first before the question, I would like to thank you all for organizing, all the organizers for organizing this event. It is a very, very good event, and as a Rwandan and as someone who is yearning for change, I think we commend you for what you have done, and I would thank all the experts here who have spared their time. Like Susan says, she has been on her Ingando with the family. I think that's very, very encouraging and gives hope to the Rwandans. So my simple question
It was not Ingando, it was Muganda.
We're picking vegetables.
Yeah, but
we're not making roads.
Spare time and leave the family and give us some few minutes. My simple question is this: how does she reconcile the discourse, which I would call the dominant orthodox, the government is passing on the Western countries, with the reality on the ground?
I think, is it my turn to speak?
Go ahead, Susan. I don't know if I caught the whole question.
I think I understood. He's asking how can, I think, we as outsiders reconcile the discourse of success that predominates in the West with the realities on the ground, which is, from my perspective, increased hardship for many. I think that's what I heard him to say.
Is that right, Abdul Karim?
Did we lose
Go ahead,
him?
Susan. Go ahead and answer that one.
So it's actually an interesting question. I'm working on a new paper that I hope to present for the first time at the African Studies Association on this very question. And I've been working with a colleague in Ottawa, actually, to try to understand how the RPF has been so successful in crafting a particular narrative of success in the West. And I think it's not actually only the work of the RPF. They have a very solid PR machine. They have been able to push forward women, for example. You can't go anywhere in North America, for example, without hearing that Rwanda has the most women in parliament. When you raise the issue, well, those women don't actually have any political power. They operate at the behest of the ruling party. And I would go so far as to say it's the inner circle of the president's office. They scoff. They can't believe that to be true. When individuals hear that Gacaca has reconciled the country, I ask them to think about the power relations behind that and the way in which the state has its hand in everything. And I can tell you consistently, I've been marginalized. People think I'm talking trash, I don't like this government. Statements that I'm against oppression and I'm trying to open up the power dynamics that situate Rwandans are not welcome. So starting from that position, we have actually begun to look at the stereotypes in the West. The West is so desperate for an African success story, and Rwanda has been very good at crafting a narrative that actually plays into what the IMF wants to do, what the World Bank wants to do. You also have leaders like Susan Rice, who were there immediately after the genocide, Mary Robinson there immediately after the genocide, overtaken with emotion about the horrors of what they witnessed, not yet ready to see what the RPF had done as part of the Civil War and as part of the genocide, because of course human beings like to simplify things. We think in terms of the good guys, the RPF, and of course the bad guys, the Hutu extremists. And there, I think we do actually have an opportune moment at this time, because editors and other journalists, human rights defenders, activists in the West have now reached a point where they are willing to write critical comment about President Kagame and his policies. So you may have noticed I just published in the New York Times last month, I think it was. I have tried to publish in the New York Times for 4 years. So for me, that's a huge moment that we have, because of course editors and others who control the thoughts of Americans, control the media, are now catching up with the knowledge that we have on the ground. The challenge is that it's so hard to get good information from the ground, because of course it's very difficult for Rwandans or foreigners to go in and do research. Human Rights Watch and other organizations have been expelled or hamstrung by the rules and regulations of the government. So I think we're actually entering into a period where we need to keep focusing on the rights of Hutu, the memorials, the oppressive nature of some of these re-education programs that I mentioned in my initial talk, and find a way to convince the average American that Rwanda has a long cyclical history of violence, and the RPF has not done anything different. It has actually begun to entrench and harden some of the divisions that have characterized Rwandan history since before the colonial arrival. And I think there is a really, here in English-speaking Canada and the United States, this idea that Belgium is the problem with Rwanda. The Belgians absolutely were bad for Rwanda, but the monarchy manipulated them in a way, and I see Kagame doing almost the exact same thing. So you have this recreation of tradition that is rooted in a romanticized pre-colonial past, and of course getting Westerners, Western policymakers, Western donors, Western advocates and friends of Rwanda to look beyond the veil is I think the moment where we are. So that's where I would urge people to push.
Thank you very much, Susan. I'll give you my question, then we'll have a question from an audience. My question is, you identify, what's wrong, what is not going on, what the government is doing, which might undermine indeed the constitutional process. So do we have, is any research which have been done, or any kind of tests, or any good practice, or any model which have been discovered, which can be used to forge to develop reconciliation in the post-conflict situation like Rwanda, where the kind of the amount of the killings and the genocide or destruction which have created a lot of mistrust in people. So there's any model which kind of we can say is universal, or any some kind of guideline which exists, which can be used and which we can we can ensure through reconciliation.
There isn't within the literature any firm model that works in a universal one-size-fits-all way, and that's actually one of the main critiques within the transitional justice literature, is that each conflict has a different configuration of actors and interests and resources at its disposal through which it can begin to assert reconciliation. I think the model maybe isn't the way to go. For me, in the area of the literature in which my work is situated is really about how do you let individuals who've lived through violence reconstitute their lives? Is it livelihoods? Is it trauma counseling? Or some other bundle, some other toolkit like that? And I think the main weakness that I see in cases like Rwanda and across African societies more generally, I'm thinking of Mozambique and Liberia, is an overwhelming urge to declare reconciliation accomplished or achieved, when in fact it takes decades, if not generations, for individuals to reconstitute. And I keep saying individuals because I want to distinguish this from groups. So the West often focuses, and this is definitely a focus of DFID, the British Aid Organization, and USAID, the American Aid Organization. They want to look at reconciliation between Hutu and Tutsi, not realizing that depending on your location in the Rwandan social structure, your economic class, your political affiliation, your age, your gender, and other different identity markers, in seeing Rwandans through the lens of ethnicity and through the lens of groups, they actually create or recreate, as the case may be, harms at the level of the individual. So if we think of a Hutu woman who lost her Tutsi husband and she's not allowed to declare as a survivor, the models and the approach of group reconciliation can't accommodate someone like her. If we think of the fears and the hardships that a woman who's lost her children and her immediate family, all male relatives, the fact that the government made land available to women in the late 1990s, early 2000s, that doesn't help her because she doesn't have access. So the point that I would like to make is to look beyond the models and see how these models are interacting with individual lives and to move away from a group dynamic. So sadly, I don't see a model that will emerge. We can look within the model that the international community uses, and it is this group dynamic, and I think that's the main source of concern.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try and connect one audience.
Mm-hmm.
Hutu and Tutsi, not realizing that depending on your location in the Rwandan social structure,
Renee, can you ask the person to mute their video?
Hello.
Different identity markers in seeing through the lens of ethnicity.
And can you mute yourself while you're trying to work that out, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I'm trying to do it.
Okay. Hey, Susan, in the meantime, while he's connecting the audience member, I have a question, but this is only if we have time after the member of the audience. My question is, given your research and your interaction with the common people in Rwanda, and basically with all the hardships you just mentioned and the examples you gave of certain individuals that maybe are who are definitely excluded in the process of not only reconciliation but some of the government incentives and things like that. Given that situation, and given that there is such a large hundreds of thousands of Rwandans who have grievances that cannot be aired, and given all of the massacres that took place throughout the early 90s and the genocide and after the genocide, and even still today, the repression that's still taking place in Rwanda. What is the likelihood, or what is the path to reconciliation? One is, what is the path, and two is, what is the likelihood of reconciliation taking place? But let's see if the audience members are able to connect first, and maybe you can answer that later if we have time.
Okay. How much time do we have left?
Renee, how much more time do we have Susan on?
For about 2 minutes. Hello?
Hello?
Are you connected? Yes.
Yeah, I'm connected.
Yes, okay. Can you ask a question? Say your name and ask a question.
Yes, yeah, thank you very much. I'm called Jackson Munyaragwe. I'm Secretary General of an opposition movement known on the name of Rwandan Protocol for a Rwandan Kingdom. Our organization is focusing on changing even the system of governance in our country, in our wind of change, not only changing the regime. So I want to first thank the organizer of this event, that is Global Campaign for Rwanda's Human Rights and African Great Lakes Action, and your and other partners that are depicted on your advertising media. I want to thank the expert that you invited to speak in this event or to provide their presentation, like Dr. Zami, like Dr. Peter, and Dr. Susan. I have a question which I want to ask Dr. Susan, is concerning reconciliation. It's concerned with the reconciliation. Dr. Susan, the current regime in Rwanda, which is RPF, you mentioned a lot of things on Rwanda, and most of them I agree with you. But the issue of truth-telling and reconciliation in Rwanda seems to be a very big challenge to the current regime in Rwanda, because today there is no political space in our country. Another thing, we have issues in Gacaca, which was very, very much abusive, as you said, and Gacaca was one of the, and justice is one of the tools of unity and reconciliation.
We've got a technical glitch. Go ahead.
There are some countries like SADC members and other international community members are trying to ask the government of Rwanda to understand and to accept to meet them. But in this case, the government is not accepting to sit with its opposers, mostly the RD, the FDLR. In this case, we know and we believe that one of the reasons which is the barrier for reconciliation in our country is that the current regime has a lot of criminal cases against it. We can say an example, the case of crimes that carry.
I think we just lost him.
I think can you answer the first question?
The shoot down of President Habyarimana's plane, which is a very big challenge, whereby the current government of President Kagame is here to discuss or to negotiate with opposition parties, because those which are in exile and those which, of course, in rebellion, which hold arms, because they fear, the government fear to be accountable or to discuss on this matter of which caused genocide, that is shooting down or crashing down the plane of former president of Rwanda. Another issue is that the government also have a very big fear of negotiating or discussing the matter of mass killing of Hutu in DRC, which may also be called genocide according to previous
Mr. Munyeragwe, can you speed up your question, please? We're running out of time. Please, please conclude your question.
Just a second. A question to Dr. Susan is that, how, according to her experience, which advice, technical advice, can she provide to us for how reconciliation can be applicable in our country when there is negative attitudes by the government, the country?
Okay. Susan?
Yes. I think if I understand his question, he's asking about working with the current government given its unwillingness to be truthful about its own activities, starting with the downing of Habyarimana's plane and the most recent UN report and the ways in which it has eliminated or killed Hutu living in Congo. I actually think this needs to come from outside the country, from Rwanda's donors. It needs to push the RPF to open up political space. We need to stop accepting and continue to agitate for this idea that Rwanda has a special kind of democracy because of the genocide. And starting, I think, with Habyarimana's plane, it is my opinion that the RPF actually downed the plane. I think the preponderance of evidence points to the RPF. However, I say preponderance because we don't actually know new evidence could emerge, and I could be wrong about that. At this moment, and I have felt this way since about 2000, when we started thinking about, who downed the plane. I think it was the RPF. So to begin to work diplomatic channels, but also popular writing, speaking to students, writing op-eds, doing blogs or Twitter or whatever the case might be, to begin to push back against this government's wall of lies, for lack of a better phrase. It's not unique to the RPF. Governments across the world tell lies about what they've done. But to remember the humanity of all Rwandans requires that the government be truthful. And I think this is the main concern about the reconciliation policy. It is rooted in a version of events that is not accurate for the majority of individuals who must perform it. And I think until we can have a full reckoning about the role, the actual acts, the actionable, justiciable acts of different Rwandan groups, RPF included, we are at a stalemate. So I think we need to push. We just need to keep pushing to have patience and to appreciate that these things take a long, long time. And Peter, that might answer a little bit of your question. Was it Peter who posed the one about the likelihood of reconciliation?
I asked the question, the likelihood of reconciliation given all the grievances so many people in Rwanda have against the current government and the current military, and the fact that there's so much impunity all over the country for those crimes.
Yeah. So as you might guess, I'm not particularly hopeful. So I don't have, it depends on your definition of reconciliation. For me, it's a meeting of the heart where you forgive, you find a way to tolerate, and then begin to accept one another. That is not going on for very many Rwandans right now. Compounded, I think, by the unwillingness of the RPF to acknowledge what it has done, and further compounded by the fact that it brings people from outside who grew up in the diaspora and able to work with them or manipulate them, depending on your perspective, to actually implement their policies. So you have a group of non-survivors working with survivors, and I think one thing that's distressed me over the last couple of years is the government is trying to put the genocide behind it, except when it's politically expedient to trot it out and show it to the international community. And this, of course, is an affront to many Rwandans, particularly survivors who have witnessed or experienced horrific acts of violence. Those who've come from abroad, they may be well-meaning, they may be well-informed, but not having that experience of the embodiment, the physical and emotional experience of witnessing or experiencing violence makes them in my opinion, not the right group of people. There's just a lack of concern for the emotional and physical well-being of so many Rwandans at the moment, rooted in a discourse of reconciliation, which is why I said, in response to the former question, we need to just keep chipping away at this body of falsehoods that the RPF has crafted.
So it sounds like really the first step, not to put words in your mouth, but
feel free.
Sounds like the first step is really for us who are advocating on foreign policy towards Rwanda, need to continue to push and get the donors and the partners to move and to push and pressure the current government to basically get its act right.
I think there's momentum for that at the moment because the RPF has exhausted a lot of its goodwill vis-a-vis the United States. So I can tell you just quickly in the last few minutes, I actually have attended a briefing to brief the incoming American ambassador to Rwanda. He knows what's going on. How to implement it is really where we're struggling. So there is a change, I think, amongst the international donor community. We need to remove or neutralize folks like Bill Gates, Paul Farmer, Bill Clinton, Tony Blair, because a lot of people say, oh, Tony Blair's doing it, that's a good thing. And to begin to understand and teach foreigners that Rwanda is actually a culture of domination at the moment. The RPF does not allow for breathing space, and that's deeply problematic. So I can tell you, students at my school, Colgate, were supposed to go to Rwanda, and I actually forbid them to go because I didn't want them to get caught up in the PR machine. And in my own teaching, I spend so much time undoing the ideas that people have gained from Clinton or Philip Gorovitch. His book, Leave None to Tell the Story, seems to be the predominant way through which Americans understand the genocide. So for people like me to work with people like you, just keep chipping away at this huge iceberg. It will melt. I think our time will come. The question is, will it happen peacefully? Will there be a peaceful transition of power in Rwanda? At this moment in summer 2014, I don't feel optimistic. But with some effort, maybe I'll feel more optimistic this time next summer.
Thank you.
I think we're coming to a close. I just wanted to, along the lines of what you just said on the media front, our coalition of organizations, U.S.-based advocacy organizations around the Great Lakes, we actually have a press conference this Thursday, again to push the U.S. government and hold President Obama to his words, where the U.S. will partner with strong institutions and instead of strong men. Our press conference is going to be on Thursday, the 31st of July, from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. So, that's along those lines. We are working on getting it live streamed, and we will put out the links and everything to make sure that those who are on the internet can follow the proceedings.
And I can say for myself, I actually have a deadline for the New York Times Magazine on July 31st. My co-author and I wrote an op-ed about why Rwandans are disappearing in the New York Times. They have asked us to write a 7,000-word piece on the RPF's machinery of trying to shape Western opinion on the successes in the country. So we hope to finish that and submit it for publication by Thursday. So it should be published in August.
Susan, we've got one quick question from the audience, which is in relation to the new program by the Rwandan government called Ndumunyarwanda. And the audience person is asking, what impact can it have in the long term in the context of the process of reconciliation? What do you think?
I'm not sure if I can speculate on the long-term aspirations. I think the whole machinery, of which Ndumunyarwanda is one, is part of the problem. The government is firming up or locking in the ways in which people must reconcile and mourn. I see Ndumunyarwanda as a program designed to actually try to identify who is loyal to the government's political aspirations, political projects. I think they're using it as a way to weed out students, weed out bureaucrats, and weed out civil society leaders who aren't on board. So they're looking for dissent, and if you don't take the oath in the way that they have asked you to speak it, you can find yourself in a lot of troubles. I'm not a fan of the program. I'm also quite disheartened that so many political leaders have stood up and made blanket statements apologizing, for example, on behalf of all Hutu. This idea that only Hutu killed and only Tutsi died is reinforced in a program like in Rwanda, and that's my concern. So long term, it will continue this long cycle of structural violence in which some people are favored and most people are excluded from the political process, creating a large disaffected society.
Okay, thank you. Do you still have some time for one question?
Yeah, I do. My kids are outside and they're happy, so.
Okay, all right. One other person.
Sure.
Susanna, thank you very much. We really appreciate what you're doing for Rwandans at large. But I don't know. My name is John Mgenzi, and I'm an activist, youth activist. And for me, it's just interesting that you also working on another research with one of your colleagues on how to tackle this PR machine that Rwanda is using to be able to continue the legacy of lies and try to tell the Western world on what isn't going in Rwanda and making it a true story. But as now the civil society is increasing, especially with the young people, and I don't know whether you followed Dr. Zan when he was speaking, that he advised us that we need to now focus on these multinational donors and corporate organizations which are very powerful, like the Bill Gates as well. How is your research going to influence these big multinational companies like Elston and Young, which are doing the PR, to be able to influence them to be able to now to talk about the reality on what is we are been talking about Rwanda. Not only Tutsis died, but also we've got a big number of Hutus. So we need to look at a clear concept. How can we influence these big multinational companies to be able to push them to now to tell Rwanda to at least to expose Rwanda in the true picture, so that we can move on, so that they can be able to now to understand and say that, okay, now it's time we need to sit down and talk about a true reconciliation.
I don't have any magic answer, in the sense that multinational donors, as you call them, companies coming in through foreign direct investment, human rights aren't necessarily their concern. And I think there is a policy challenge in the sense that Rwanda is stable. For any criticism you might have of the government, we can also acknowledge it has accomplished a stable country. Foreign partners like a stable country, particularly when you look at some of them. DRC is very unstable. Not, keeping in mind, of course, Rwanda has a hand in that. Donors don't look that deeply. So I think it's important to understand donor cycles. A lot of the bureaucrats that we meet, they're bureaucrats. They have careers, they cycle in, they cycle out, and I think the important part is to keep in mind, always front and center, that the government is reinforcing and re-entrenching the various trends that led to the genocide in the first place. And that is done slowly, systematically, through careful fact-finding, but also through fact-checking, monitoring, and continued campaigning. And it's slow and sometimes difficult work, because of course the Rwandan government does not look fondly on those who criticize it, and it can be a risk to your life, it can be a risk to your well-being. To keep in mind the broader perspective that we're talking about the human rights of a nation, of a people. And when the government excludes some, they exclude all.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Thank you for your time, and I think we have run a lot from your intervention. We're going to
I just wanted to interrupt. I'm sorry. I'm happy to share my research with anyone who likes to would like to read it. So if they would like to receive an article or something that I've written, please just get in touch with the organizers. They can give you my email.
Hey, Susan, would you like us to distribute your paper or research to
if someone's interested, I'm happy to send it. I don't want to fill people's inboxes, but if someone asks, I'm happy to share. Because of course, the problem with the academy, a lot of it is firewalled. You have to be a member of a university or belong to an academic library to access a lot of these things. So if someone would like it and they don't have access, I'm happy to share it.
Great. So you will resend it to us, then we'll be able to distribute to the people who
sure.
want to talk.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Also, can we put in our website as well? We can put in our website so other can access it. Hello? Susan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your important information which you just shared with us. We hope it's going to be very it's been very useful for activists, young people, politicians, human rights advocates in their work of every day of trying to find the solution of Rwanda. Also, we are very grateful for your long-term interest in the issue of Rwanda and your contribution you have done in terms of running and research. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Susan.
Take care.
The next will be David. Trying to connect him.
Wanted to remind the audience, Renee, will you can you fix the technology? I think it's still on Susan's camera. But wanted to remind the audience that this conference is organized by Global Campaign for Rwandans' Human Rights, an advocacy organization based in London that advocates for Rwandans' rights all over the globe, and also by African Great Lakes Action Network, a US-based advocacy organization whose goal is to achieve peace, justice, and prosperity in the Great Lakes region of Africa. Benem Genzi is one of our moderators, and Marilise Numhoza is also another one of our moderators, and myself, Claude Gatebuke, your other moderator. We're also doing this in collaboration with Fahamu Refugee Program and the University of Sarajevo. Have we connected with David?
Yes, David.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. So you're on now. So, hello, David?
Yeah.
Yes, hold on. You're going to be next. Hold on.
To our audience, I would like to quickly make an introduction for Dr. David Himbara. Dr. David Himbara will speak about challenges of measuring social outcomes and development indicators, as well as dangers of misreporting them. Dr. David Himbara is a former principal private secretary for the current president of Rwanda. He currently serves as an independent consultant on public sector, private sector, and higher education institutions across sub-Saharan Africa. and he has worked as a strategist for various governmental, private sector, and multilateral organizations. And Dr. Himbara was the founding chairman of the Rwandan Development Board, and in addition, he was head of strategy policy units for Rwandan presidency, as well as founding chairman of the Institute of Policy Analysis and Research. Dr. Himbara, please welcome. Can you still hear us, Dr. Himbara? Dr. David? Bear with us for a second.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Yes, that is fine. Yes, but you're gonna be you on now. You just been introduced.
Oh my goodness.
So, so the floor is yours.
It's a bit awkward. I didn't hear how I was introduced. I don't see you. Technology has failed completely. Can you hear me?
Well, we can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you very well.
Okay, so here you go. I feel a bit strange because I'm just, you know.
Maybe we can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm one of the moderators, and we just introduced that the topic you'll be speaking about is about challenges of measuring social outcomes and development indicators, as well as dangers of misreporting them. So that's basically the topic we introduced.
Wow, okay. Let me see if I can do justice to that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity to share ideas with the compatriots and friends. Thank you very much indeed for this. So basically, let me start by saying that what I always find extraordinary is the fact that most people, even critics of Rwanda from the human rights perspective, they seem to take for granted that Rwanda is an economic success. I think that this is actually not the case. And it also, I always also wonder, because it's so easy to see that it's not the case, but most people seem to want to see it as a success. Let me, for example, say, if, for example, you hear that Rwandans have a universal healthcare coverage, it doesn't occur to people to question if, for example, there are doctors in that country. Because once you do like a quick assessment, you'll find, for example, that the ratio of doctors to the population is 0.1 to 10,000. So there goes the universal coverage. If you, for example, you say, well, there is universal education, primary school, but at the same time, it never seemed to occur to people to wonder, are there teachers? Especially when there was this sudden change from French to English. where would have the teachers come from? From the heavens? They drop from the heavens? I don't know. Okay, so then people visit Kigali and they're impressed with the city. It looks modern, very clean. People go to the shopping malls, like in Cape Town or Johannesburg. But for some reason, people don't wonder that what would happen if I walked like even a kilometer away from the main road. What would I see? Again, if one had a curiosity, by reading even Rwanda's own data, you could find that well. For example, only 5% of the population, only 5% of energy from Rwanda come from electricity, 10% come from petroleum, and 85% come from biomass, wood. So, and of course, if you go off the main road, you probably won't find any rural roads. But definitely, if it's in the rainy season, you won't be able to travel. So, yeah, I mean, so it's not a laughing matter, but I always laugh. If also one had curiosity, how many people here in this country actually earn a wage? If you disregard for 1 minute that, well, the official documents say that unemployment rate in Rwanda is 2.4%. Wow. That's a percentage that any leader, even David Cameron or President Obama would die to have such a statistic. But of course, that's pure fantasy in Rwanda, because when you look at alternative data, even from Rwanda's own data. So, for example, if you want to look at, well, you are curious enough to say, well, let me see how many people. By the way, are you there?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Because you see, I have no way of knowing who I'm talking to, and so anyway, if you're there,
You have a large audience. You have a lot of people listening to you. The University of Sarajevo is connected, and there are many people online that are following the conversation. You probably noticed that in the question-answer section.
Okay, very good, very good. So instead of buying this 2.4% unemployment, well, a little bit of work would say, well, we know that the population of Rwanda is 11 million plus, and that means roughly that economically active population, those from 16 years to 65, they're about 500,000. They're about 5.5 million. So out of these 5.5 million that are economically active, how many people actually earn a wage? So they are not working on they're not working on their own little shambas, or the ones who actually earn a real wage. So we measure that by looking at people who, by law, are required to pay into Social Security Fund. That's how we can capture the real numbers of people who work. Because by law, your employer or yourself, you are obliged to pay into that social security. I would if I were near you there, I would have asked you to guess how many people are actually registered with the social security fund. Random guess, take a guess, how many?
I have no idea. 10%?
No, give me an actual number. Say, is it 1 million? Is it 500,000? What is it? Out of 5 million?
About half of them, 2.5.
Okay, someone else take a guess.
1 million.
Wrong. 265,000 are the Rwandans who are registered with the Social Security Fund. Let me ask you to take another guess. How many mainstream companies pay tax that sustain Rwanda? Are we talking about 2,000, 1,000, 120? How many do you think? The ones actually who pay 80% of the tax. How many companies do you think there are?
Can we say 50?
Eh?
50. 50.
Okay. No, it'll be a bit generous. Another one.
About 1,000?
No, too much. 350.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So look, this is not a success. But having said that this is not a success, let me actually now go back into my former presentation and show how, in fact, I look at Rwanda. I tend to look at Rwanda in two phases. Phase one, no, 3 phases, but today I want to talk about phase one. Phase one would have been from 94 to 99. That was creating an emergency situation. Revive, emergency addressing genocide and its effect. So, in terms of forward-looking planning and development, we would have to begin from 2000 to 2009. I would say that actually this period looks as if it was very promising. I was sometimes I observed. So I'll show why I believe that in fact this period was a very important period in which a developmental foundation was actually being built. I'll show that in a minute. But the third phase, though, is one that begins from 2010 to 2014. I would say that this was a reversal. This was a squandering of what actually had been accomplished in the period 2000 to 2009. So let me now speak then about these two periods. First, 2000 to 2009. Why do I believe that there was success? It was a good attempt. Here, I would cite at least 7 successes. The first success was really what I might call clarity of purpose. Rwanda, or leaders of Rwanda, told the world where they were going in terms of development. They indicated the course that they were going to pursue. That's the famous Vision 2020 with its pillars. So Rwanda told the world that it was going to build institutions that would lead change, that would pursue progressive policies. But Rwanda told the world that it was going to transform subsistence agriculture into commercial agriculture for food security and export market. Rwanda told the world that it was going to build a dynamic and entrepreneurial private sector that would lead prosperity creation. Rwanda told the world that it was going to build human capital and skilled workforce. Furthermore, Rwanda told the world that it was going to build a world-class physical and IT infrastructure. And lastly but not the least, Rwanda said that it was going to integrate with the neighbors to develop an agenda of shared prosperity. So let me ask you, who would not listen to this and who would not believe this? If you know, you know, in my world, I judge people for their clarity of purpose. If you know, and of course, the first step of clarity of purpose is indeed to stay where you're going. So this was done. And this is durable. I would say this is how most countries have developed, by doing those very things. Okay, so that would have been success one. Success two is that actually, then Rwanda, in particular the Rwandan president Paul Kagame, he undertook a global campaign to sell this vision and to gain support. This he did, very spectacular. There can be no question about it.
David?
Yes?
You have 2 minutes.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Oh,
It's,
okay. I better run quickly then.
Yes. Mm.
Okay, so this he did. Very quickly, by 2012, to show you success, the United States alone was pumping into Rwanda 150 million per year. Before Britain broke off, changed its policy of donor support, it had actually planned to pump into Rwanda 326 million pounds for 5 years. So all these are indicators that in fact the president of Rwanda and Rwanda effectively mobilized international community to support its vision. Let me tell you also that he successfully also mobilized the corporate world. To give you 2 examples, Contour Global in 2009 announced the largest single foreign investment into Rwanda, $300 million to develop electricity. Another good example of a mega project that was announced in that period was that this Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway was going to build a railway from Kigali to Dar es Salaam. Let me also say that domestically, Rwanda had mobilized, was able to mobilize wealthy Rwandans to also invest in the country. This is when, for example, this Mikor Waitali purchased and renovated Milcolin. Triba Rujugiro built the $20 million UTC mall. So really, however you measure it, the vision, mobilizing support both from within and outside. The Rwanda government itself invested in in a hotel that became Serena Hotel. This hotel, the only 5-star hotel in Rwanda, became instrumental in building a sector that hardly existed before. That is services and tourism, that is currently earning the leading earner of foreign exchange. Okay, so let me quickly say now, with this activity, what happened then from 2010 to 2014? Then we have seen now the country go in the reverse. Well, first, there was violence at home against opposition that were attempting to run for political office. The violence became extended into exile, trying to assassinate people overseas. You saw the Rwanda's involvement and support of M23, and this is now what led the squandering of donor support that led to suspension or switching from direct budget to other forms of support. Let me share this statistic with you. Suspension of aid, for example, led to a fiscal gap of 230 million in 2012 alone, equivalent to 3% of GDP. In this period where the goodwill became goodwill, I should also mention we have also seen predatory behavior, like grabbing properties. This is not limited to grabbing of Rwandan properties, like say the illegal seizure of UTC, for example. But there are others that you have not noticed. For example, I give you an example. Chevron, an American company, used to supply fuel at Kigali International Airport. This company was squeezed out. The company that replaced it, Bahri International, from Saudi Arabia, was also squeezed out. There are many cases. And of course, those promises, those earlier promises, like the building of Kigali, Isaka, Dar es Salaam, that was going to link Rwanda to the coast.
Mr. Himbara.
Let me conclude.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So how do you build a railroad to Dar es Salaam when you are at war with Tanzania? How would you do that? So this is why nowadays we're hearing now that it's Kigali, Kampala, Nairobi, Mombasa. We don't know what happened to Kigali, Isaka, Dar es Salaam. I would maybe I was a bit too slow again because I'm not there. I didn't read your body language, so I don't really have much to say beyond that. In conclusion, I would say that we had the period 2000 to 2009 was promising. All the necessary ingredients were there, but for some reason, self-interest, short-sightedness led to the reversal. Where do we go from here? I would be lying to tell you that I know. But I would also suspect that even those in power probably don't know. It's day by day. I would leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. So I've got one question. So I understand from your presentation that most of the information or figures were given in terms of development in different sectors, they are cooked they are really not reflecting the reality at the grassroots, the reality of the people, the reality of what is happening in Rwanda in terms of the development in all area. So my question is as we know, information we have in terms of those development is not the real one. Is there any way, because we don't get it from the government, is there any way the grassroots, the people, the community, is there any way they can collect information so we can compile them so they can see the the real picture of the country without going through relying on the government figures, because they are not helping, they are not giving the real figure, and I think there's a very big danger for that.
No, thank you very much, Menez, for that. Mugenzi, look, let me say first of all that for the Rwandan intellectuals, I would say that the issue is laziness. Laziness to pursue statistics, because there are, even in Rwanda's statistics, there are some reliable statistics. I'll give you an example. The Benin statistics. Benin has good statistics. I always find good statistics. Trade statistics, monetary, fiscal statistics. It's all there. Then you have international bodies. World Bank, IMF have statistics, credible statistics, and very often when they are using Rwanda's own statistics, they say so. They say so also to alert you that, be cautious.
Which statistic did you say is a good one?
For example, World Bank.
And where the World Bank get, what is system existing which facilitate World Bank to collect credible statistics?
Oh, the World Bank, they're on the ground. They finance many projects. Yes. So even looking at the monies they spend, they track the money. For example, if they say, well, we are giving Rwanda, which is true, $30 million for capacity building.
Okay.
They monitor, they evaluate.
Okay. They
don't just dump money and go.
But
wait a minute, okay. Even in the case of UK, United States Kingdom, United Kingdom, for example, UK has financed education, big time. But UK has studied the use of its aid and actually has concluded that that aid was not effective, even though all the children go to school, but the quality is not there. So you have, you don't just go lazily and look for this, you push one button to get a statistic. You have to work for it. You have to look at how they have evaluated, how they have monitored. Then for foreign investment, the UN system, the health statistics. You have the World Health Organization. You have to be creative. Looking at credible Rwandan, but also, by the way, for example, the people who pay, the people who pay into Social Security Fund, don't go into to the Rwandan Statistics Agency. Go to the site of that agency itself, Social Security Fund. They won't lie. They won't say that they won't say that they have 1 million subscribers and then where is the money? It's not possible.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, David. Claude.
Yes, Mr. Himbara, there's a question from the audience from someone named Karine, and the question is, although your presentation is focused on economics, really the question is what is it, or how is it, given that you were a member of the government of Rwanda at one point, why does the government of Rwanda think it's a good idea to use economics to mask atrocities and human rights abuses? And do they actually think this can succeed and be sustained, to always claim we have advanced versus oh, we've advanced economically, but we're killing people, so don't pay attention to all the people we're killing?
Yes. Okay. So, okay. Thank you very much for bringing that in. That I worked for government. Actually, I worked for government twice. 2000 to 2002. It didn't work out. I said, look, you guys, you're not advisable, because I was saying, well, look, I used to say, well, please advise me how I can advise you. So it's not working. Then I left. Then in 2006, I was invited to talk about, they have these annual retreats. So I had left Rwanda, I had forgotten, I went back to what I used to do. Then I was invited to give a talk at the leadership retreat. And then a few months later, I was called back. I said, look, you spoke about how effective, building effective economic management institutions. You come and do it then. You come and lead the, you come and, you come and do it. Stop talking. But I said, well, will you let me? He said, okay, no, we'll let you. So I went back. I mean, look, I don't want to sound as if I'm praising myself, but really, the time I was there, from 2006 to 2010, I worked like a donkey. I almost died. I almost actually died. I was working 24 hours. So now back to the question. We reformed laws that would promote investment, build institutions like Rwanda Development Board, things like that. But here is what led me to question my presence there. It's the very question that that person just asked. The question of exaggeration, it became a big problem for me. I would say, if you say you have grown by 11%, but how does this 11% come about? Then we would say, well, so who are you to be asking this 11%? But it's my job, sir. I don't see it coming from agriculture. I don't see it from, you know. So so the disagreement actually came from exaggeration, and I decided to leave again and never to come back. And of course, then I became by that I became a dissident. I was labeled a Chigarasha because I left. But the question is, the question I think was, how does Rwanda hope to get away with it? By cooking statistics. There seems to be a belief that if you keep talking and lying and so on, somehow people will believe. But of course, eventually you'll be discovered. I think eventually, I think more and more people are beginning to understand. I think Susan made that point. More and more people are really beginning to see the nature of that government. More and more people begin to say, well, Kigali is not rural. It's not rural. There is a major difference. people are beginning to understand that even the little electricity that there is in Rwanda, which is just about 110 megawatts, which cannot even power a small neighborhood in London. Most of that electricity, 50% of it is consumed in urban areas. People are beginning to understand that. But it begins with all of us, even we, human rights activists, all of us. We always give credit that, oh, wow, even though they're killing people, but at least they have achieved an economic miracle. No, there's no economic miracle, none whatsoever.
But how do they hope to get away with it? Regardless, even if there was a miracle, how can you claim I am killing people, but hey, I'm doing so well economically, it's okay. I can kill millions of people and, you know, let me get away with it because I'm doing well economically.
Okay, but let's begin where we are. You are in UK. How much pressure are you bringing on UK government to say, hey, why are you financing this so-called economic success? Which it is not.
We're having a hard time hearing you. Could you step to the microphone?
Okay, let me repeat that. I would say, if all of us were doing a bit of more aggressive work, so you in the UK putting pressure on the government to even say, well, why are you financing this so-called economic success that is not, that is also killing people? Those in the US should be asking President Obama, why are you inviting Kagame to this meeting when you have not invited Mugabe or the Sudanese dictator or Eritrea? What makes him different from those? So it's up to us to push harder even where we are. I don't think that we push hard.
Okay.
Go ahead, Rene.
Okay, thank you very much. We've got a question from an audience. Her name is Parfin. The question is the impact of Congo mineral in Rwanda economy of all those years. How is it today post M23?
Excellent question. Excellent question. Actually, this question allows me to bring in one factor that I had to abandon because of time. In Rwanda, there are actually two economies. There is former economy, known as Rwanda economy. Then there is RPF economy, known as Crystal Ventures. This economy, RPF economy, actually is threatening to become larger than Rwanda's economy. And I think the Congo resources were not going into Rwanda economy, but they were going into RPF economy. Basically finding its way outside into foreign accounts. So to me, I don't think that Congo minerals would make a difference to Rwanda's economy. This is my belief. But it makes a big difference to RPF economy. That's where the money was going. And so let's make that distinction. I do not really think that, most of those wealth somehow ended up benefiting Rwanda. No, it benefited individuals. That is what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you, Claude.
Yes, Dr. Himbara, I wanted to follow up to your previous comment about pressuring the government of the countries where we are and where we are citizens. I'm based in the United States, and as part of African Great Lakes Action Network, and also part of the larger coalition that includes organizations such as Trans-Africa Forum, that was a major player in the U.S. During the anti-apartheid movement, AFJN, Friends of the Congo, and Foreign Policy in Focus, IPS, and multiple others. We have been for years putting pressure on U.S. governments to stop supporting dictators in Africa, especially in the Great Lakes. And we have made some strides forward, starting way many years back when we would present and people would just laugh. And now today, we're actually invited to go and present to not only lawmakers, but policymakers in those kind of things. And in that line, I wanted to inform you and inform the audience, as I have earlier, that we continue to put pressure on the U.S. government. We, in fact, on Thursday, have a press conference that is going to address the question of why Obama's invited dictators and strongmen, especially from the Great Lakes region of Africa, including Kagame, who are responsible for the death of millions of people in the Great Lakes region, who are consuming our tax dollars that we are paying here. And this press conference is going to be at the National Press Club on Thursday in Washington, D.C., between from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. And I'm hoping that Rene will also advertise it on his on the global campaign for human rights. Some of the things that we've previously done a couple years ago, the U.S. mission to the United Nations refused to release the report that was naming Rwanda as one of the perpetrators of the atrocities in the Congo through the M23, the proxy M23. That time we mounted not only a media campaign, but also an advocacy campaign at the UN level that had and included even U.S. ambassadors and various other people to pressure the mission at the UN to allow the release of that information. And we also continue to push that our tax dollars, that aid money, does not continue to go to repressive regimes that are not only killing their own citizens, but also citizens of our neighbors. And in addition, they create a national security issue for the United States, given the examples of people like Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden, and a long line of others who have come back to hunt the U.S. policy of supporting dictators. So I just wanted to share that with you. And I know that there's also been a lot of work done in the UK, and would encourage other advocates online to also continue to pressure the governments in the countries where you are, donor governments, so that we can put enough pressure on the government in Rwanda and hold them accountable for the abuses and the war crimes and all of the repression that Rwandans are having to go through.
Excellent. If I can request that you and I, we should chat afterwards privately, because I have an idea that I want to share with you,
Okay.
especially in the case of the U.S. So as for UK, I remember really, I remember when Rene jokingly said that he had financed his own attempted assassination. You know, being a taxpayer and sustaining the regime in Rwanda that was coming to kill him in the UK. You remember that, Rene?
Yes, I do. And in the UK, yeah, we've been doing some work as well for the last 6 years, especially for the last 2-3 years. And you have noticed a lot of things changing. Of course, we still have a lot to do, and which is encouraging is that we're seeing some changes, which we haven't seen for the last 15 years. The last 3-4 years, a lot of things are changing, and we're hoping that more people joining us to do some work at all levels would be able to raise awareness and and make sure that the policymakers, the government, really understand what is happening. Not only understanding, also do some action that will push Rwandan government to go on the right path. Thank you very much, David. Thank you for your time. We're going to say bye to you, but we keep in touch, doing the good work for our people. Thank you for sharing.
Hold on, there might be a quick question from the audience, but go ahead. Proceed.
Oh.
Is it there?
Go ahead with your statement. I'm looking at potentially a question that's being typed right now.
Okay, because I was telling him bye-bye.
Okay, let's go ahead and wrap it up.
Okay. Thank you.
So please call me afterwards, after this, for a debriefing, yeah?
Okay, then we'll keep in touch. Okay.
No, just now, after, if you don't mind.
Okay, then.
Okay.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you, David.
Thank you to everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Okay. Before we kind of say the final conclusion, it's something we should have mentioned earlier. There is 2 other of our speakers, the speakers that we plan to put forward, who had apologized. One of them is Dr. Gianni Tognoni, who was going to talk about alternatives to international justice, and Dr. Barbara Harrer-Bond, who was going to talk to cessation clause in relation to Rwandan refugees. And hopefully these 2 speakers, actually there is a third one as well, who is Professor Daniel Fairstein. And hopefully these other speakers will be able to join us in the next forum we would be planning sometimes in October. But to specify, for Professor Daniel Fairstein, he has a book that we would love people to read before our next meeting, our next conversation in October. Dr. Fairstein has published a book that he has called The Genocide as a Social Practice. And in his book, he looks at the policies of state-sponsored repression pursued by Argentine military dictatorship against political opponents between 1976 and 1983, and those pursued by the Third Reich between the 1933 and the 1945. He finds similarities not in the extent of the horror, but in terms of the goals of the perpetrators. But the reason why I brought this book as well to the forum, I did listen to his talk in April 2014. Dr. Fairstein spoke at the London conference on Myanmar's Rohingya, which can be found on YouTube. So if you Google the event, the title of the event is called The Decades of Persecution and Destruction of Myanmar's Rohingya. And listening to his talk, I realized that he mentioned 6 stages of genocidal genocidal social practices, and those 6 stages are stigmatization, harassment, isolation, policies of systematic weakening, extermination, and the last one, which he called symbolic enactment. And having listened to his talk, I finally got the picture of how of what happened, where the origins of the Tutsi genocide in 1994. But it led to me asking myself whether what he's talking about, the 6 genocidal social practices, are not the things we are experiencing today in the society. And I'm putting this forward to our viewers and the expert that we spoke to today to look at this book and look at these 6 stages, and hopefully they will be able to shed the light on what we may be experiencing in Rwanda, or probably something else. I'm not sure what people come up with, but I would like to have this book for the next discussion that we'll have. And I think this is all that I had to share today. And I would like to pass the final concluding remarks to Claude. Claude, up to you for final remarks.
Hi, thank you very much, Marilise and Renee, for moderating this event. And would like to especially thank the experts who were able to share with us, and apologize for the technology glitches that we experienced at the beginning of this conference, and also at some points during this conference. Would like to thank our partners, the University of Sarajevo and the Fahamu Refugee Program. And again, would like to remind the audience that this conference was hosted by Global Campaign for Rwandans Human Rights, and also African Great Lakes Action Network. Special thanks for those of you in the audience that sent in your questions, and those of you who followed the conference and either texted your comments and questions and reactions, or sent us messages on email or Twitter, or via Skype. We would like to thank everyone that, all over the globe that is following this conference, and we will keep you posted on the next one. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good rest of the weekend, and we'll be in touch. Again, my name is Claude Gatebuke.
Okay, thank you, Claude. Thank you for your last remark. I would like also to add one more thing. I would like to call for people who have listened to this conversation, who feel they would like to do something, they would like to be involved in campaigning to raise awareness about the issue of the country, human rights, or somebody about the reconciliation processes, people who want to contribute in terms of international justice, organizing these events, and also have got some ideas about how we can, save people, or trying to raise awareness wherever, which country they might be, or people, if also if if we have got any any information about human rights abuses, please join us. Send us an email at info@rwandansright.org, and so we can be able to to be in touch and work together and see how we can take this forward. Thank you again for you, Claude, and for all this for all the experts who participated. We will see you again soon. And also, I have to apologize for some technical problem we had at the beginning, which was not planned. But with technology, it happens. But we managed to overcome them. And also, I thank you for the University of Sarajevo, who have been following and have been supporting us to run this event. Thank you.
Okay, we're signing off.